the best way to get to Africa? Fly. There may be many different aircraft that you will fly on. Above the clouds for 10,000 miles. 22 hours in the air and then many hours spent in transit in airports. And 37 hours later, I arrive at my destination, Zimbabwe. At the airport, I feel like I have come home. My good friend Rose met me at the airport and then drove me into town to her lovely home. She has a 5-bedroom house all to herself, and I stayed here with her every time that I was back in the city. And we shared the house with 5 cats and 5 dogs. Months earlier, before my trip, everyone was praying for God to provide a vehicle to be ready and waiting for me. Through my new Christian friend Mario, I got just the right car. It never failed me. I was so happy to find that gas was plentiful, and everywhere I went, it was there. It was a bit pricey, $7 a gallon, but what a pleasure to always find it. It was good to be back in my old city. That first week was very busy. There were people to see and businesses to contact and preparations for my trips going out into the bush. And yes, I am driving on the left side of the road. And stoplights in Zimbabwe are called robots. It was still wintertime here and very dry. A few trees were a bit green, but mostly everything was just brown and dormant. You could always tll who was using borehole water. Their yards were green and lush, inside and out. A winter plant that shows off its colors the best is the bougainvillea. All over the city I would find these metal sculptures of animals. Some looked very real and they were beautiful. Recycled plastic was used to fashion these ornaments. They would look beautiful in a yard and they're waterproof. African people are very industrious, artistic, and creative. These wire and bead animal heads were outstanding. If you want to get a real taste of Africa, you need to visit a market. Here you will find all kinds of goods for sale, produce, foods, and delicacies. What a wonderful, friendly environment this is. The first Sunday that I was back in Zimbabwe, I was in my home church. I grew up here in this church and they were so dear to me. Pastor Keith was one of my teenagers in the youth group 25 years ago. He and his lovely wife are the ministers here in this congregation. That weekend on Saturday, we had a Sunday school teachers workshop. It was a delightful time with all of these ladies. I spoke in the service on Sunday, and I was so happy to see old familiar faces, but to meet many new friends too. Lobengula building was built in 1987. Although COVID affected attendances in the city, this church has continued to grow and flourish. Pastor Svenika was a new face to me, but I really liked him, such a zealous man for God. And he has a good group of leaders that work with him. They're really on the ball. The older generation remembered me, and they were so happy to see me again. Such sweet old ladies. I spoke 2 times on Saturday and again on Sunday morning. was an honor to participate in ordaining 2 men to the ministry. The ladies prepared and served a delicious lunch to several hundred people that day. It was delicious. Now it's time to leave the city and head north. It would be a 3.5-hour drive north to the town of Hwange. Once in a while I would come across a toll booth requiring $2, but the roads showed little improvement. This was my most frequent stop, coming and going, to fill up with gas and maybe get something to eat. I'm driving on a newer bridge and roadway, but 50 years ago we faced flooded bridges and a 1-lane strip road. The trip took all day. Now it just takes 4.5 hours. And from this point on, watch out because elephants can be crossing the road. There are many trucks that travel up and down this road. Slow vehicles going up an incline require a driver's patience. I saw several wrecks as I traveled the roads. This truck was hauling bricks. I arrived in Hwange. It's not very big, but it has a large population. Most of the workers here are working in the mines and coal refineries. Coal is one of Zimbabwe's main sources of energy. I would be staying with the Sabanda family. Tracy, in the black dress, would be my constant companion for the next 3 weeks. I had a comfortable room and I felt very at home with them. And I especially enjoyed the time that us gals had every morning at breakfast. On Saturday, I met with the women of the church, a great group of ladies. I really enjoyed my time together with them. Pastor Angel leads the Hwange church, such a sweet-spirited man, and his lovely wife, Pretty. So many churches in Zimbabwe still meet outdoors under trees or primitive shelters or in school classrooms. I would love to see more permanent structures here. We're going to this area for 2 weeks, so I'm packing a lot of provisions and supplies. And I always had extra people with me everywhere I went. We have about a 3-hour drive to reach our destination. As we drive into the Zambezi area, we'll see a lot of these trees, the baobab. They look like trees that were planted upside down with their roots in the air. Their big seed pod is a source of cream of tartar. We will encounter several herds of cattle on the roads, also goats, sheep, and donkeys. The best thing to do is slow down. Crossing a larger bridge, I was really happy to actually see some water and a few residents too. Crocodiles down below, sunning themselves. When we turn around and look at the other side, the truth about the dry season is very evident. Nothing further on, only rocks. We also come across a lot of one-car bridges. They can be a little bit scary at times. All other small rivers and streams are bone dry, no water at all. In the distance are the Kamativi Mountains. That's where we're headed. We are going to pass through the hills and then on down into the river valley. Along the way, we're going to pass several growth points where shops have sprung up and people gather to sell a variety of goods, especially produce. And it's also a very popular bus stop. People who want to go to and come from Bulawayo. The Gwai River area is known for its clay pottery. They do many beautiful pots, all sizes and shapes, and a lot of fun objects too. A typical African village is a complete home. Every hut equals a room in a house. Huts on stilts are storage rooms, especially to keep produce and items safe and protected. In Binga, I stayed with the Muzamba family. After a week with them, I became Auntie Dab to all the kids. They were such a delightful family to know. They took good care of me and Tracy. The 5-bedroom house under thatch sometimes had up to 18 people in it. A glorious display of color in winter is the Sabi Star. It loves the dry weather. Granny Muzamba was so much fun. Every breakfast morning, we sat and talked. Even though we didn't speak the same language, we still seemed to understand each other. From Binga, every morning we drove about 30 minutes to Manjolo Church. Each day was for teaching. I spoke 2 or 3 times every day to this group of pastors and their wives. It was a very good 3 days together. Any meetings that I called for, I would provide the food to feed everyone. Some ladies and men would volunteer to do all the cooking for us, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Everyone was well fed, and our dining area was on fancy benches. On the menu today was sadza and goat meat with vegetables. When the meat is cooked well, it really is delicious, and I love sadza. Each evening I drove back to Binga for the night. You do not want to drive after dark on African roads.
Jesus never changed. He's the same. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, money in the future. Up to the end.
I was also given time to speak on Sunday to the church. And there were some decisions made to accept Christ. So we made a trip down to the water. Here the water is the Lake Kariba. We drove down as far as we could and then walked the rest of the way. And this is what it's all about, my friends, being born again into Christ and God's family. These 3 girls became 3 of my favorite girls. They were lovely young ladies. I really enjoyed them. The road was much worse from here on out. You could not miss a pothole if you tried. On the home stretch, this road was actually smooth and a pleasure to drive on, and we're now just minutes away from my destination. But on the way, we're going to pass a few things. This is the biggest termite hill that I have ever seen. It looked like a castle. The Zambezi church building was built in 1980. This congregation is led by a second-generation pastor, Moses Mugande. He is such a real asset to the work of God and one of my mission representatives in the country. We also pass a new addition to the community, a bunch of small shops. This is the new clinic that was built, and many of you donated medical supplies to it. They also built houses for the nurses who will come to live in the area and work at the clinic. Many of you donated baby clothes and blankets to mothers of newborn babies. They expressed their gratitude for such a kind, loving gift. Thank you so much. The principal of the Zambezi school was very grateful for the supplies contributed to the students. They were so excited. Crayons, pencils, rulers, you name it. And once again, in the middle of just nothing, the beautiful bougainvillea just pops up. When I arrived at the old mission, a welcoming committee was waiting to meet me, sitting under a mango tree in the shade. Children had also gathered to see their missionary. They had only heard stories about me. I brought some candy to sweeten up the event. For 2 weeks, this would be my little place where I would stay. It was so comfortable, quiet, and restful. I named it Deb's Place. And inside it was spacious. No water, no plumbing, no electricity, but it was my favorite place to be. I just loved it here. But maybe part of the attraction was the view that I looked upon every day. And sunrise was always so special. About 6 o'clock in the morning, the sun would shine so bright on my windows that it would wake me up. I had my own personal alarm clock. There were some very important people in the area that I needed to meet to introduce myself and let them know who I was and what I was doing in their area. I'm following protocol. Chief Saba was a very delightful man to meet. With a lot on the ball, he was very encouraging and supportive of the work that I came to do. Heads of villages have a lot of authority in their areas. I had a wonderful time with this group. We had a delicious tea time together. My dad's grave, I cleaned it up and put flowers on it. Lots of memories working together with my parents for so many years. There was sadness, but oh, there was such joy in my heart and thankfulness. What a lively group of churches. It was going to be 4 wonderful days together. Although it was wintertime, the sun is still very hot. A big sail was stretched out on poles to give some shade. It helped a little bit. 18 people from the neighboring country of Zambia even crossed the river to join us. I didn't forget the children. I had prepared lessons with visuals and took some fun stuff for the kids to enjoy, so they could have 5 sessions of teaching and fun together. And this little girl, oh, she was the sweetest, friendliest African child I ever met. She stole my heart. On Saturday, we gave everyone a little bit of free time. Many of these people had not seen each other for a year, and it was time to catch up. There was lots of laughter and fun going on. The young men played a very competitive but friendly game of soccer. Such bright, colorful, and friendly people. This was a great bunch of kids. Four men were ordained to the ministry. And this young man is a third-generation pastor following in the footsteps of his late grandfather and his own father. After the Sunday service and lunch, a group hiked down the hill to the river, and that special union took place, becoming a child of God. And yes, there are crocodiles around, but God is merciful. There were 9 baptized on this day. Because of the dangers of going to the river, I had a steel company create a tub for me to use for baptisms. It would hold just one person, but it would work very well. Every meeting and every conference, food was provided and meals prepared and cooked to feed everyone. Preparation and cooking, a lot of hard work. Being out in the rural bush area is so serene, and I definitely enjoyed my 2 weeks here with all of the hustle and bustle of meetings. Every day ended with a quiet sunset, giving way to a very dark night and a good sleep. I have just 3 weeks today before I will actually be leaving and heading back to the States. So I'm happy to be here. Been enjoying myself, seeing lots of good people and reacquainting myself with the country again. Lots of changes, a lot of changes for the worse. It's not as clean and beautiful as it used to be, but people are still wonderful. So I'm thankful to be here. It's time to return to city life, and I was pleasantly surprised that the jacarandas were really starting to bloom. The city was beginning to look pretty again. City traffic is always interesting. I think we could take lessons from this guy on how to really load a trailer. I was able to spend several tea times with friends, and being at home with Rose was wonderful. I had electricity and hot water for bathing. Rose monitors a school crosswalk at 7 o'clock every morning on a very busy, dangerous road. And little Tana, oh, she was a fun, pleasant distraction for sure. And of course, eating out was always great, especially the fancy Coke float. The church building at Inketa was built in 1985. This congregation was hard hit over the COVID years. You'll still see some people wearing masks. Some restrictions in the city are still enforced, but there is also a lot of freedom in churches. I preached that morning and really enjoyed the fellowship of these brothers and sisters. After the service, no one was in any hurry to go home. Everyone shakes everyone's hand. It was now time to head out of Bulawayo in a new direction. I filled up with gas and I headed out to the Gwanda district. The landscape is very different in this part of Zimbabwe. You won't see any baobab trees, just more open shrubland. And village homes vary from square buildings to the traditional rondavels, some of them very beautiful. This area also has irrigated farming. They grow much of the produce for the cities. A change in the color of the trees indicates a very brief spring. The colors really look more like fall to me. The road was halfway decent, but you will notice hills that are here and there, and their noticeable features are the rocky outcrops on the top of each one. And then this is the granddaddy of all, one huge granite hill. This week, our focus in Gwanda is getting 2 boreholes repaired and working. Off the paved road, we travel a distance on dirt roads, passing donkeys and goats and cattle and many villages. A pleasant surprise was meeting this handsome dude, a Brahma bull. A sure sign of drought is a very dry riverbed. But if you dig down deep enough, and I've seen some holes that are 8 feet deep, the water seeps up and people can collect water or animals can drink. So we went to borehole number 1 at Dombashoko. The pump had been inactive for many years. And Gaylord could not even budge the pump. It was seized up completely. So all of the old pipes, 60 yards of them, had to come up out of the ground, a new pump placed in the hole and lowered to the water level, piping was laid to the big tank, and solar panels were installed. Everything was connected and ready to go, but no water. It was 3 days covered by prayer before God released the water to flow and the tank filled. Borehole number 2 at Chalet had the same bush pump, and it was still moving a bit, but water was not really coming up very much. So the same procedure was followed, installing a new pump, a big tank, solar panels, and success! Plenty of water flowed. Praise the Lord! At Chalet, the church there has acquired its own property to build upon. They are a very positive group and they trust God to help them. They have an attendance of over 180 and they meet under this tree on Sundays. We drove into the town of Gwanda to buy supplies and food for the conference that was upon us. Gwanda is one street of shops and businesses, and it has grown so much that I couldn't even recognize it. It is now a very busy little town. All traffic going to and coming from South Africa passes through on this one road, trucks, buses, and all other vehicles. It was truly amazed at the changes that I saw. It was a pleasant surprise. The Dombashoko church building sits in a lovely spot. I feel such peace here. It was built in 1978. A small house was also built where the pastor who comes to work with the churches and evangelize the area stays when he's here. We had a wonderful 3 days together. Several rededicated and recommitted themselves to the Lord. And one girl accepted Jesus as her Savior. There was lots of preaching, teaching, fellowship, and fun together. As always, food was provided. A large steer had been butchered and delivered by donkey cart. Open fires cooked big pots of sadza and meat and vegetables. And really, it's a delicious meal. Now I was back in Bulawayo again. And this time I was going to be going out of town 8 miles to the church at Kensington. This was built in 1984 and the congregation is one of the fastest growing and very active for God. And it was a Sunday to celebrate. Everyone was happy to have their missionary there to rejoice with them. Many kind words were shared about my dad and my mom loving them and helping them over the years. It was wonderful. All of it was followed by a huge feast. What an awesome day to be with God's people. The church has a very old borehole that no longer works. In spite of this, they hauled water in to build a house for their own pastor. After many months of working and getting it done, in February of 2023, they came together to dedicate the house to the Lord and bless their pastor and his family. I am so proud to see how much these people have sacrificed to accomplish such a wonderful thing all on their own. God has truly blessed them. I'm leaving the city now for the last time, going out to the Zambezi Valley one more time. I have many meetings and many things to do while I'm still there. While here again, I stayed one night with the Muzamba family, and then the other nights I was back at Deb's place. We traveled out every day to visit pastors and have meetings. We met with church leaders and churches to stabilize the work so that unity and fellowship could flourish among the churches once again. After all of this was said and done, I felt that I was leaving behind a team of faithful men to carry on the good work of God. All that God had set before me was done. His plan, His way, for His purpose. My work was finished. I was now in my last week in Zimbabwe. 8 weeks of non-stop meetings. I needed some R&R. So I decided to take a few days and went to the Safari Lodge in Hwange. It's too expensive to stay there, but I always enjoy stopping to have my lunch here. A burger and a big pot of tea. I remained here for about 2 hours just watching the animals to see if anything would come to the water hole, but it was too hot in the day for animals to move around. As I headed to my destination, I came across a new project that was protecting endangered wild dogs. They rehabilitate sick and injured dogs and then return them to the wild. I was very impressed and happy to see that someone was doing something really good. I found my bush road again and traveled down it for about a mile until I came to an opening where there was a beautiful place, a camp in the middle of nowhere, Iganyana. And Iganyana means wild dog. It was a perfect place for me to unwind, relax, and get refreshed. The whole camp was open air style, so nothing would detract from viewing the animals that would come. I was hoping to see elephant, but up until now, they had avoided me. I had not even seen one elephant. The tent was very secure that I stayed in. Every evening an armed guard would escort me to it after dark. It's wild out here, you know, and anything could be hiding in the bushes. I was relaxed, comfortable, and I felt safe at night. Every day I would leave the camp and drive around on different roads looking for some animals. I saw some, but not too many. I could never find any elephant. It's warm during the day, so animals don't move around very much when it's hot. Do you see the giraffe in the background? The baboon were very mischievous. They would come almost every lunchtime and look around for something to eat, and some of them would even venture close by, looking in the trash cans. And every evening, as the sun was beginning to set, a big bonfire was lit. One could sit in the yard and watch animals come up to drink. My favorite time was sunset, eating dinner and watching and just waiting, hoping that something was going to show up at the water hole. Several different herds passed through, all sizes and ages. Many preferred to come up and drink out of the pool. This teenage elephant was like a kid blowing bubbles in his drink. All too soon, my safari adventure was over, and it was time to head back to the city for the last few days before I would leave. I would fly out on Saturday, but on Wednesday I said, "It's going to rain today." And 4 hours later, it started raining. And it rained the whole rest of the evening, the first rain in 5 months. I received some lovely gifts from friends to bring back with me as well. And sitting at the airport, I was sad but joyful. God had been with me every step of my journey, and it had been quite a journey. There will always be a road in my heart that takes me back to Africa.